My mother looked me in the eye and said, "Your son will never fit in at Disney World." A few minutes later, her text hurt even more. "The kids have been planning this trip for months. Your son simply doesn't belong." She had no idea my 10-year-old boy woke up before sunrise every morning to deliver newspapers, saving every dollar in a glass jar because he believed he was earning his place beside his family. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply replied, "I understand." Then I quietly spent $35,000 on a Disney trip that changed far more than one vacation. It exposed a truth my family had buried for decades. And by the time it was over, none of us would ever look at that little Disney fun jar the same way again. I learned something that morning. Sometimes, the deepest wound isn't being left out. It's realizing the people who left you out expected you to stay quiet so they could still feel decent about it. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from today and what time it is where you are. And if you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong by the people who should have loved you most, this story is for you. At 5:12 that morning, the kitchen still smelled like yesterday's coffee. I stood barefoot on the tile, watching my son count quarters into an old glass jar with a blue strip of painter's tape across the front. In his careful 11-year-old handwriting, it said Disney Fund. Ethan had written the words twice, because the first time, the D looked crooked. He did not know I had noticed that. He sat at the counter in his neon safety vest, hair sticking up on one side, newspaper bag resting by the back door like it was part of the furniture. Most kids his age were sleeping through the first pale light of June. My boy was sorting folded bills from coin rolls, making sure every dollar had a job. "Almost there," he said, tapping the lid with 2 fingers. I smiled because that was what fathers do when their hearts ache and their children are still innocent. "How much now?" $73.40. Mrs. Donnelly gave me $2 extra yesterday because I put her paper under the mat when it rained. He looked proud but not boastful. Eton never bragged. He just glowed quietly when he had earned something. Beside the jar was a Disney brochure he had picked up from the library. He had circled Space Mountain, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Haunted Mansion. Next to one ride, he had written, "Ask Callum if he wants to sit together." That little sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. My phone rang before I could say anything. "Mom, Salonia Calder never called that early unless she wanted something handled before breakfast. A bill she could not open online, a ride to an appointment, a favor she would call quick, even if it ate half my day." I stepped into the hallway so Etan would not hear. "Morning, Mom." She skipped the greeting. "Merritt, we need to talk about Disney." I glanced back into the kitchen. Etan was zipping his newspaper bag, completely unaware that his name had just entered a conversation he was not allowed to hear. "What about it?" There was a pause. Not hesitation, preparation. "I just don't think Eton will fit in at Disney World." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood her. My mother had said plenty of sharp things in her life, but usually she wrapped them in concern first. This time she didn't even bother. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means Kara's kids have planned this trip for months. They have their own rhythm, their own interests. Eton is sweet, but he's different. He may feel out of place." Different. That word had done a lot of dirty work in our family. Different meant not polished enough, not wealthy enough, not impressive enough to mention in Christmas letters. "He's their cousin," I said. Mom sighed, like I had missed something obvious. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to spare him an awkward experience." From the kitchen, Eton called, "Dad, I'm heading out in 2 minutes." I covered the phone. "Okay, buddy. Helmet." "Already got it." Mom kept talking. "You know how children can be. They notice things." "They notice adults first," I said. She went quiet. Then she said, softer but colder, "I'll text you. I don't want this turning into a whole thing." The call ended. I stood there with the phone in my hand, listening to Eton pull open the back door. The hinges gave their usual tired squeak. His bike was leaned against the porch railing, front basket tied with 2 bungee cords. The sky outside had begun turning orange over the rooftops of Winter Garden. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too. Watch the corner on Plant Street." "I know." He grinned like I had said it 1,000 times, which I had. The door closed. A few seconds later, my phone lit up. Mom's message was waiting. "The kids have been planning this trip for months. Your son simply doesn't belong." I read it once. then again, then a third time, slower, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. They didn't. Your son. Not my grandson. Not Eton. Your son. I looked at the Disney fun jar on the counter. $73.40. A crooked blue label. A library brochure covered in circles. A boy who woke before sunrise because he believed hard work could earn him a place beside people who should have made room for him without being asked. For most of my life, I had been the youngest son who understood. Merit can switch shifts. Merit won't mind. Merit is easygoing. Merit will get over it, and I usually did. Not because it didn't hurt, but because peace was easier when I was the one paying for it. But this was not about me. This was Eton. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type a paragraph. I wanted to list every morning he had pedaled through humid Florida streets while his cousins slept behind blackout curtains in Windermere. I wanted to tell my mother that Disney did not reject my son. His own family had. Instead, I wrote 2 words. I understand. I sent it. Not because I agreed, because I had learned something over the years. Some people don't hear pain. They only hear resistance. And if you give them resistance too early, they turn it into proof that you were the problem all along. So I set the phone face down. Through the front window, I watched Etan coast down the street, his newspaper bag bouncing against his side, his vest bright against the waking road. He looked small from a distance, too small for the weight adults kept trying to hand him. When he turned the corner, I went back to the counter. I touched the lid of the Disney fun jar but did not open it. Then I picked up my phone, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my banking app. That was when I saw the confirmation email I had helped my mother send 3 weeks earlier, and my hands went still for a completely different reason. The email was still there, tucked between a hospital payroll notice and a coupon from a hardware store I never used. Disney Resort reservation complete. I did not open it right away. I sat at the kitchen table with my thumb resting on the mousepad, listening to the house settle after Etan left. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a lawn sprinkler clicked in slow circles. Everything around me felt ordinary, which made the message on my phone feel even uglier. Finally, I opened the email. The page loaded with cheerful colors, smiling families, fireworks over Cinderella Castle. It looked exactly the way it had looked 3 weeks earlier, when Mom called and said, "Merritt, I hate to bother you, but you know I'm terrible with these online things." That was how it usually started. I hate to bother you. Then came the favor. She said Kara was busy showing houses in Windermere. Reginald was tied up with work, and she just needed me to help push the buttons. So I sat at this same table for almost 2 hours, comparing resort rooms, matching dates, checking cancellation policies, and making sure the family package didn't cost more than it had to. At the time, I was glad to do it. I remember thinking Eton would finally get that big cousin trip he kept talking about. I pictured him walking beside Katie and Callum, holding one of those park maps, pointing at rides like he had discovered another country. Now I scrolled down to the guest details. Solonia Calder, Kara Voss, Reginald Voss, Katie Voss, Callum Voss, Bria Landry. 2 more relatives from Tampa. No Eton. I leaned back slowly. There are moments when anger comes fast, like a match striking. This was different. This was a door opening into a room I had been standing outside for years without realizing it. They had not forgotten my son. He had never been there. My eyes went back over the reservation dates, the room numbers, the park days. I remembered Mom saying, "Don't worry about the children. Kara and I will handle that part." I remembered Kara laughing on the phone when I asked how many kids we were counting. "We're keeping it simple this time," she had said. Simple. That was the word people used when they had already decided who was complicated. Reginald had joked in the background, "This trip is going to be one for the books." I had laughed then. I did not laugh now. I opened the attachment with the itinerary I had helped build. Character breakfast, Magic Kingdom, Epcot, pool day, fireworks viewing. Every slot was polished and planned. There was even a note in Kara's neat little formatting style. Matching shirts for the kids on day 1. The kids, not all the kids. Just the ones who belonged in the picture. My phone buzzed on the table, and I flinched before I saw Eton's name. I answered quickly, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he said, breathing a little hard. I could hear his bike chain clicking. Mr. Harrison gave me $5. He said I got his paper closer to the door than the grown-up delivery guy ever did. Despite everything, I smiled. That's because you care about doing it right. I'm really getting close now, Dad. I might even have enough for Mickey ears if I don't buy snacks at the gas station. I closed my eyes. The boy was bargaining with himself over gas station snacks, while grown adults were planning how to erase him from a vacation I had helped arrange. That's smart, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm proud of you. I'll be home after the last 8 houses. Take your time. Watch the traffic near the school. I know, Dad. He hung up happy. I kept the phone against my ear for a few seconds after the line went quiet. Not because I expected him to say more, because I needed one more moment before I became the man who had to decide what came next. I looked at the Disney Fun jar across the kitchen, $73.40. Then I looked back at the reservation. A strange calm came over me. Not forgiveness, not yet. More like my heart had stopped wasting energy, trying to make excuses for people who knew exactly what they were doing. I opened my banking app, checking first. Enough for bills, groceries, gas, nothing dramatic. Savings next. Responsible money. Emergency money. Then retirement. Untouched, as it should be. Finally, I opened the separate investment account my father had left me after he passed. I rarely looked at it. It felt like something I was supposed to guard, not use. A quiet inheritance from a quiet man who had never cared much for showing off. The balance appeared. I stared at it for a long time. For years, that money had meant security. That morning, it started to look like something else. A way out. Not out of my family, not out of the pain. A way out of teaching my son that he had to stand outside, lock doors, and be grateful for the porch light. I did not transfer anything yet. That mattered to me. I was angry, but I was not reckless. I wanted my next move to come from love, not pride. So I closed the banking app. I did not call Mom. I did not text Kara. I did not ask why they had left Ethan off the list, because I already knew the answer. People like that always have one ready. We didn't want him uncomfortable. You're taking it the wrong way. Don't make this about money. You know how kids are. I had heard enough versions of those sentences to know they were not explanations. They were covers. Instead, I opened a new browser tab. My fingers paused above the keyboard. Then, I typed 2 words, Disney VIP. The search results began to load, bright and expensive and impossible to ignore. I thought I was looking for a vacation. What I was really looking for was the first place in my son's life where he would not have to ask whether he belonged. The search results filled my screen, but I did not click anything yet. Disney VIP, private tours, premium access, prices that would make most people close the laptop and walk away. I almost did. Not because I could not afford it, because old habits have a way of speaking in your mother's voice. Don't be dramatic. Don't make a point. Don't spend money just because your feelings got hurt. I pushed back from the kitchen table and stood there for a moment, looking at the browser window like it was asking me a question I was not ready to answer. I needed the account paperwork from my father's estate. It was in a file box somewhere in my closet. At least, that was what I told myself when I walked down the hall. The truth was simpler. I needed a reason to slow down before anger made the decision for me. My bedroom was quiet, the blinds half open, a line of Florida light cutting across the carpet. I pulled 2 plastic bins from the closet, then a stack of old tax folders. Behind them, wedged against the wall, was a wooden box I had not touched since my father's funeral. Dad made that box when I graduated high school. Arlen Calder was not a man who gave speeches. He built things. Birdhouses, shelves, porch steps, a workbench that outlived 2 lawnmowers and 1 marriage. When he handed me that box, he only said, "Keep what matters where you can find it." The brass latch had gone dull. The corners were scratched from years of being moved and never opened. I carried it to the bed and sat down. Inside were ordinary things. That is what hurt. A receipt from Kara's college bookstore, the year she said she was short on money, and Mom said, "Just help your sister out. She has real potential." A repair invoice for Mom's roof after the hurricane, with my name on the payment line. A folded grocery list from when Dad was recovering from knee surgery. At the bottom, in his blocky handwriting, He had written, "Thank you for helping your mother again." Again. That word sat there like a weight. No one had ever put a hand on my shoulder and forced me to be the useful one. That was the clever part of it. They just praised me when I made myself smaller. "You're so dependable, Merritt. You're easy to count on. You don't need much." At 19, I had believed those were compliments. A faded envelope slid from between two old papers. Inside was a photograph from the summer after high school. 4 friends on a beach near Clearwater, sunburned and laughing, holding paper cups and cheap sunglasses. I was not in it. I remembered why, before I even turned it over. Dad had needed help getting to physical therapy. Mom did not like driving on the highway. Kara had already made plans. So I stayed behind, worked extra shifts at the grocery store, and told everyone I would catch the next trip. There never was a next trip. That was how it started. Not with cruelty, with convenience. One more ride, one more repair, one more holiday where I could be flexible because I was single, then divorced, then already used to doing things on my own. Under the photo was a sealed envelope in Dad's handwriting. My name was on the front, Merritt. I stared at it, confused. I did not remember reading it. Maybe grief had swallowed that day whole. Maybe I had put it away because I was tired of feeling things. The paper opened with a soft tear. The letter was short. "My son, the easiest child to overlook is usually the one carrying the most. People will praise the loudest voices, but families are held together by the quiet ones. Never mistake being overlooked for being unimportant. And if you ever have a child of your own, make sure he never has to earn the love that should have been his from the beginning. Love, Dad." I read it once, then again. By the third time, the words blurred. Not because Dad had written anything fancy. He had not. That was what broke me. He had seen it. All those years I thought no one noticed. He had. I folded the letter carefully and carried it back to the kitchen. Eton's Disney fund jar sat on the counter where he had left it. The blue tape label was slightly crooked. The brochure was still open beside it. Little circles around rides he wanted to share with cousins who had never planned on sharing the day with him. I placed Dad's letter next to the jar. For a while, I just looked at them. One was from the man who had finally named what I had carried. The other was from the boy I refused to let carry it next. That was when the inheritance changed shape in my mind. It was not just emergency money anymore. It was not just a future college cushion or a number I protected because responsible adults are supposed to protect numbers. My father had left me more than security. He had left me a choice. Repeat the pattern. Or end it. I picked up the letter and slipped it into my wallet, behind my driver's license. Then I returned to the table, opened the laptop, and clicked back into the Disney page. This time, I was not looking backward. I was preparing to give my son one day no one in my family could take away. My father spent his life teaching me that money should serve people, not pride. The next click would test whether I had truly learned that lesson. I took Dad's letter out of my wallet one more time before I clicked anything. His signature sat at the bottom of the page, plain and steady, the way he had been. Arlen Calder never bought things to impress people. He wore work boots until the soles gave out, drove the same truck for 16 years, and thought a handshake still meant something. So before I spent a dime of the money he left me, I asked myself the only question that mattered. Would this honor him? The Disney page showed several options: regular tickets, resort packages, lightning lane information, private VIP tours. I moved past the basic offers and read carefully. Personal guide, customized day, priority attraction access, reserved viewing, private transportation, character dining if available. The kind of trip my mother and Kara would have called excessive if anyone else bought it, then bragged about if Reginald did. The price made me sit back. I will not pretend it didn't. $35,000 is not pocket change. Not for a man who clips grocery coupons and fixes his own garbage disposal because calling a plumber feels wasteful. My first instinct was to close the page and tell myself I had proved a point just by looking. Then I pictured Etan at the kitchen counter, counting quarters. Almost there. He was not almost there. Not with them. Not with people who had already shut the door and then asked me to admire how politely they locked it. I opened my investment account again. Dad's inheritance sat there, untouched except for modest growth and quarterly statements I usually ignored. I had labeled that money in my head years ago. College, medical emergency, house repairs, retirement cushion, all good reasons, responsible reasons. But then another thought came, quieter than anger and stronger than pride. What if protecting my son's confidence is responsible too? I did not want to buy revenge. Revenge is loud, and it usually leaves a mess for children to clean up later. I wanted to buy Ethan one day where no adult made him feel like an extra chair at the table. Before I went further, I called Corin Hayes. Corin and I had known each other since community college. He became a financial planner, the kind of friend who could tell you the truth without making it sound like a lecture. He answered on the third ring. Merritt, if this is about rolling over that old account, I'm between calls, but I can give you 10. It's not that exactly. He heard something in my voice. Okay. Talk to me. So I did. I told him about Mom's call, the text, the email, the missing name, the Disney fund jar. I told him about Dad's letter and how I was looking at a VIP Disney trip that cost more than some used cars. Corin stayed quiet long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, "Are you doing this to make your mother feel small?" "No." "Are you doing it so your sister's friends will talk?" "No." "Then why?" I looked across the room at the brochure Ethan had circled in pencil. "Because my son thinks he has to earn a place they should have given him freely." Corin exhaled. "Then I'll say this as your friend, not your planner. If you were spending that money to win a family argument, I'd tell you to sleep on it. But if you're spending it to give Ethan a memory that keeps him from believing their version of him, that's different." I rubbed my hand over my face. He added, "Just don't confuse luxury with love. Make sure the day is about him." That settled me more than approval ever could have. After the call, I made coffee I did not drink and sat down again. The Disney representative I spoke with sounded warm, professional, and surprisingly patient. I told her my son loved the history of the parks, trains, engineering, and anything that made him feel like he understood how things worked. She said, "We can build the day around Ethan. Ethan, not the extra child, not your son. His name." I looked toward the counter where the jar sat untouched. "Yes," I said. "That's exactly what I want." By late afternoon, everything was arranged. Resort stay, VIP guide, dining, transportation. Enough details that my practical side wanted a spreadsheet. Enough money that my cautious side kept clearing its throat. I reviewed the final screen twice. Then a third time. Guest name, Ethan Calder. My finger rested above the confirmation button. I thought of Dad's letter. Make sure he never has to earn the love that should have been his from the beginning. I clicked. The confirmation page appeared. I expected panic. Maybe regret. Maybe the sick feeling that comes after doing something too big to undo. Instead, there was only stillness. Not the empty kind. The kind that comes when your heart finally agrees with your hands. Ethan came home just after 6, sweaty, hungry, and cheerful. He dropped his newspaper bag by the door and went straight to the jar. Mr. Harrison gave me 5. Mrs. Donnelly gave me 1. And Mr. Patel said if I keep putting the paper under the porch, he'll add me to his Christmas list. That sounds like a serious business operation, I said. He grinned. I think I can buy my own Mickey ears when we go. I put a plate of leftovers in the microwave so he would not see my face too clearly. You probably can. He talked through dinner about Space Mountain, the castle, and whether Callum might want to ride pirates twice. I let him talk. I did not tell him yet, not because I wanted some grand surprise, because I wanted one more evening where his hope remained untouched by what adults had done behind his back. Later, after dishes, homework, and his shower, Ethan fell asleep with the Disney brochure beside his bed. I returned to the laptop and opened the confirmation email again. I skipped the total. I skipped the package details. I looked only at one line. Guest name, Ethan Calder. For the first time all day, my son's place was written down where nobody in my family could erase it. I closed the laptop softly. Tomorrow, I would hand him the envelope. The look on Ethan's face when I handed him the envelope is something I will carry with me until my last day. It was sitting beside his cereal bowl 2 mornings after I made the reservation. Plain white envelope. His name written across the front. Nothing fancy. No balloons, no camera pointed at his face, no dramatic announcement. Ethan came into the kitchen with one sock on his backpack half-zipped and his hair still damp from the shower. "What's this?" "Open it." He slid one finger under the flap and pulled out the itinerary first, then the printed confirmation, then my note. "You've been saving for this for months. Now it's my turn." He read it once, then again. His lips moved silently over the words, like he was afraid they would disappear if he read too fast. "We're going?" he asked. "We're going." His eyes moved to the Disney fun jar on the counter, then back to me. "I thought Grandma said—" He stopped himself. That hurt more than if he had finished. I stepped around the counter and put a hand on his shoulder. "We're making our own memories, buddy." He hugged me so fast I nearly dropped the coffee mug in my hand. He did not cheer. He did not jump around. He just held on, his forehead pressed into my shirt. That was when I understood something. Kids do not always need a speech. Sometimes they just need one adult to choose them without making them explain why they deserve it. A week later, we left before sunrise. The drive to Disney was quiet at first. Etan sat in the passenger seat, wearing the same careful expression he used when sorting newspaper money. He had brought a small envelope with the folded blue Disney Fund label inside. The glass jar stayed home on the kitchen counter. He said he wanted to keep the label with him, for luck. I did not tell him I knew better. He wanted proof that the dream had really come along. When we reached the resort entrance, Etan instinctively followed the crowd toward the regular check-in area. I gently guided him the other way. "Dad, I think we're going the wrong direction." Before I could answer, a smiling cast member stepped forward. "Good morning, Mr. Calder. Your VIP guide is ready for you." Etan looked up at me. "Us?" I nodded. "Us." That one little word did something to him. I saw it in his shoulders. He stood a little straighter. Then Sophia arrived. She was in her 30s, warm without being fake, the kind of person who knew how to talk to a child without talking down to him. She crouched just enough to meet his eyes. "Hi, Etan. I've been looking forward to meeting you." My son froze, not because we were at Disney, because she said his name like it mattered. She already knew he liked trains, old ride systems, and how things were built behind the scenes. I had mentioned those details during the planning call, not expecting much. Sophia remembered everyone. "So, I hear you're curious about how the monorail works," she said. Etan blinked. "You know about that?" "I was hoping you'd ask me." And just like that, my boy opened up. The day itself was beautiful, but not because of the expensive parts. Yes, we skipped lines. Yes, we had quiet entrances and reserved spots. Yes, a private guide made everything smoother than I knew Disney could be. But the real magic was smaller. A cast member handing Etan a map and asking what he wanted to see first. Sophia slowing down when he asked a question instead of rushing him along. A breakfast server remembering his name when she brought him orange juice. Etan saying thank you every single time, like he had been raised to understand that kindness should never be treated as ordinary. Near Cinderella Castle, Sophia asked him, "If you could build one thing here someday, what would it be?" Etan took the question seriously. He looked past the crowds, past the bright signs and smiling families. "I'd build rides where kids who don't have a lot of money still feel special," he said. Sophia's face softened. "Disney could use someone like you." I turned away for a second, not because I was embarrassed, because no one in my family had ever spoken to my son that way. Later, while we waited near a shaded walkway, Etan looked down at the VIP pass around his neck. "Dad?" "Yeah?" I didn't want to be special. "I know." He rubbed the edge of the pass between his fingers. "I just wanted to be invited." There are sentences a father never forgets. That became one of mine. At the end of the afternoon, Sophia removed a small Disney trading pin from her lanyard. It had a tiny train on it. "This one is for asking the best questions today," she told him. Etan accepted it with both hands. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He did not pin it to his shirt right away. He studied it like it was something earned, not given. Then he tucked it carefully into his pocket. That evening, back at the hotel, he placed the pin beside the folded blue Disney Fund label on the nightstand. The money he had saved stayed untouched at home. He had not spent a cent of it. The trip had become something bigger than what coins could buy. After he fell asleep, I scrolled through the photos on my phone. I skipped the pictures of the hotel, the private entrance, the special seating. None of that was the story. I chose one photo. Etan and me in front of Cinderella Castle. His smile was tired, real, and free. I posted it with one sentence: "Every child deserves to feel chosen." Then I set the phone on the nightstand. Less than 15 minutes later, it began to vibrate. My mother's name flashed across the screen, and before I answered, I looked across the room at my son sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. My mother's name lit the room in pale blue. I let it ring twice. Across from me, Etan slept on his side, one hand tucked under his cheek. The little train pin Sophia had given him sat on the nightstand beside the folded Disney Fund label. His face looked peaceful in a way I had not seen since before Mom's text. I stepped out onto the hotel balcony before answering. "Hello, Mom." Her voice came sharp and controlled. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I looked past the railing at the resort lights. Somewhere below, a family was laughing near the pool. "I took my son to Disney. Don't play games with me, Merritt. Kara's friends saw your post. People are asking questions." There it was. Not, "How is Etan?" Not, "Did he have a good day?" People are asking questions. "What kind of questions?" I asked. "The kind you wanted them to ask. Why your trip looked so different. Why you wrote that caption. Why we weren't all together." I leaned against the balcony door. "Every child deserves to feel chosen." That's what I wrote. You knew how that sounded. I know how your text sounded too. She went quiet for half a breath. Then she said, "We were trying to avoid an awkward situation." "No," I said, keeping my voice low. "You were avoiding the inconvenience of treating him like family." "Merritt, you told me my son didn't belong. You are twisting this. Disney didn't reject my son. You did." That line landed harder than I expected. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Mom recovered the way she always did, by reaching for the oldest tool in the drawer. "You've always been too sensitive." I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. That sentence had followed me through childhood like a shadow. When Kara got the larger bedroom because she needed privacy. When I missed trips because someone had to stay back and help Dad. When Mom called my patience maturity and Kara's selfishness confidence. "I'm not being sensitive," I said. "I'm being a father." She ended the call without saying goodbye. I stayed outside for a moment, letting the warm night air move over my face. I had barely set the phone down when it rang again. Kara. I answered because avoiding her would only postpone the same conversation. "You really enjoyed making Mom look terrible, didn't you?" she said. "Good evening to you too. This isn't funny." I didn't say it was. "You spent $35,000 to prove a point." "No. I spent it because someone needed to show Etan that his worth isn't determined by your guest list." She made a small sound. "That is exactly what I mean. You always make everything personal." It was personal when my son's name was left off a family trip I helped arrange. We were trying to spare him from feeling out of place. He felt out of place because you put him there. Kara's voice hardened. "You used your own child to embarrass this family." I looked back through the glass at Etan sleeping. "No," I said. "You used my son to protect an image." For once, my sister had no quick answer. After the call, I sat in the balcony chair and held the phone in both hands. The park day had tired every muscle in my body, but my mind would not settle. Had I made it worse? Maybe. Could I have stayed quiet? Yes. But then what would Etan learn? That adults can exclude him as long as they do it politely? That family peace matters more than a child's dignity? That being hurt is less important than not making the people who hurt you uncomfortable? There was no clean road through this. If I kept quiet, my son paid. If I spoke, they called me divisive. Only one choice protected him. That was when Corin texted, then called, before I could answer. "I saw the group messages starting," he said. "Kara's already telling people you staged that photo for sympathy." Of course she is. Listen to me. Families don't fall apart because one person tells the truth. They fall apart because everybody spends years pretending the truth isn't there. I looked down at the small notebook I used for work notes. It was still in my bag from the drive. I pulled it out and wrote his words across a blank page. I did not know why I needed to keep them. I just knew I did. When I finally went back inside, I moved quietly. I thought Eton was asleep. He wasn't. His eyes were open. Dad? I stopped near the bed. Hey, you okay? Did Grandma get mad because of me? I crossed the room and knelt beside him so fast my knees hit the carpet harder than I meant. No, not because of you. She sounded mad. I sat on the edge of the bed. This was the part nobody prepares you for. How to tell a child the truth without handing him bitterness. Sometimes grown-ups confuse pride with love, I said. And when pride gets hurt, they blame the wrong person. He stared at the blanket. Are we still a family? My answer had to be careful. We are. You and me, always. And with Grandma and Aunt Kara. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I do know this. You should never have to beg anyone to make room for you. Etan reached toward the nightstand and picked up the train pin. He turned it over in his fingers, then placed it in my palm. You keep it tonight, he said. I think you need it more than I do. I closed my hand around it. There are moments when your child becomes braver than you were ready for. After he fell asleep again, I opened my wallet. Dad's letter was tucked behind my license. I slid the Disney pin beside it. My father's words and my son's kindness rested in the same small pocket, and I understood what both of them were telling me. Stop confusing silence with peace. We came home from Disney on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Etan slept most of the drive back, his backpack tucked against his side, the train pin clipped to the front pocket. Every few miles, I glanced over and saw it catching the sunlight. A small piece of metal, maybe worth a few dollars, had somehow become proof that somebody had seen my son clearly. I thought the hardest part was over. 3 days later, I opened the mailbox and found a plain white envelope tucked between a power bill and a grocery flyer. No return address. My name written in block letters. Inside were printed screenshots from a family group chat I had never been invited to. The first message was from Kara. We can't bring Etan. The other kids will think he's weird. Another followed. He works before school. They won't have anything in common. Then Mom. It's kinder if Merritt thinks this was the children's decision. I sat on the porch step with the papers in my hand, hearing sprinklers run somewhere down the street. I expected anger. What came first was something stranger. Relief. The truth finally had edges. I was not too sensitive. I was not reading too much into one careless text. They had discussed my son like a seating problem at a luncheon. One message showed Kara drafting the exact wording Mom later sent me. Your son simply doesn't belong. They had not stumbled into cruelty. They had edited it. That afternoon, Etan was outside delivering thank you notes to a few neighbors who had encouraged his Disney savings. He wore the pin on his backpack. Mrs. Donnelly stopped him near her mailbox and asked about the castle. Mr. Harrison told him he looked like a young businessman coming back from a conference. Etan laughed, and the sound reached me from the porch. Strangers were giving him what family had withheld without shame. Interest, respect, joy. Just before dinner, there was a knock at the door. Callum stood there, hands shoved into his hoodie pocket, face pale. I mailed it, he said before I could ask. I stepped aside and let him in. He would not sit. He stood near the kitchen table, staring at the Disney fun jar like it might accuse him. I heard Mom and Grandma telling people we didn't want Etan there, he said. That's not true. Nobody asked us. Katie and I thought Aunt Salonia said you couldn't afford it. I kept my voice even. Why send the screenshots? His eyes watered, but he fought it. Because Etan wasn't rejected by us. He was rejected for us. That sentence cut deeper than any insult. I saw then that Callum was not my enemy. He was a kid trapped inside the same room, just standing closer to the people with the keys. Later that evening, Mom called. We need to clear the air, she said. By clear the air, she meant gather everyone at her house and make me explain why I had embarrassed them. I went. Not for an apology. I was done begging for those. Kara started before I had even sat down. You've turned this whole family against itself. I placed the screenshots on the dining table. The room changed. Reginald looked away first. Kara stopped mid-sentence. Mom's hand moved toward the papers, then froze. If this was really the children's decision, I asked, why were all of you discussing it weeks before they knew about the trip? Nobody answered. Mom finally whispered, we were trying to protect everyone. No, I said. You were protecting yourselves. I gathered the papers back into the folder. My hands were steady now. My son will never again have to earn a seat at your table. I left before anyone could turn the truth into another debate. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I opened Dad's wooden box and placed the screenshots inside, not as another sacrifice, as evidence that I was finished carrying blame that never belonged to me. 2 weeks passed before Kara called. I almost let it go to voicemail, not because I hated her, but because peace had become something I guarded carefully. Ethan was back on his route, back to school reading assignments, back to taping new sketches of ride ideas above his desk. Then I answered. For once, my sister did not sound polished. Merritt, she said, and her voice cracked on my name. Can we talk? I stood in the hallway with one hand on the wall. About what? About everything. We met the next afternoon at a small coffee shop near downtown Winter Garden. Kara arrived without makeup, wearing jeans and a plain gray sweater. I had seen my sister dressed for open houses, charity brunches, and family dinners where every bracelet was chosen to match a certain story she wanted to tell. This woman looked like she had run out of stories. Reginald left, she said after we sat down. I did not know what to say. She looked at her coffee but did not drink it. There was someone at his firm, and money problems. Bigger than I knew. She gave a short, bitter laugh. Turns out, perfect families photograph better than they live. I stayed quiet. Kara wiped under one eye with a napkin. I spent years trying to impress people who wouldn't bring me soup if I had the flu. That sounds lonely, I said. It was. She looked at me then, and I made it my children's inheritance. That sentence did more than any apology could have. She told me Katie barely spoke to her now. Callum had stopped asking for permission to see Ethan. Both of them had questioned why their cousin was left out, and Kara had tried to shut the conversation down with the same tired words adults use when they have no honest answer. It's complicated. You'll understand when you're older. Don't stir things up. Then Kara said what I did not expect. I didn't leave Ethan out because he embarrassed me. I waited. I left him out because he reminded me of us before we learned to act like money made us better. Her face crumpled. I looked at him with that paper bag and that little savings jar, and I saw the house we grew up in. I saw Dad fixing everything himself. I saw you staying behind while I ran toward anything shiny. And instead of being grateful, I was ashamed. That explained it. It did not excuse it, but it explained it. A few days later, Mom asked everyone to come to her house. I told her Ethan would not be part of any adult conversation, and if anyone said one unkind word about him, I would leave. No speeches, I said. Mom's voice was small. No speeches. I almost didn't believe her. At her dining table, the old family photo album was already open. The one with cracked plastic pages and yellowing corners. Mom turned page after page without saying much. Birthday parties, graduations, holiday dinners. There I was in almost every picture, but rarely where people looked first. Standing behind Kara, holding someone's coat, carrying a cooler, loading Mom's car, leaning out of frame because I had been the one setting the camera timer. Mom touched one photograph from a summer cookout. Everyone sat around the table. I was in the background, by the grill serving plates. I always thought, she said slowly, that because you didn't complain, you didn't need as much. I looked at that younger version of myself. No, I said. It meant nobody noticed when I did. The room went still. Kara lowered her eyes. Callum looked at the table. Katie pressed her lips together like she was trying not to cry. Mom covered her mouth. I am sorry, she whispered. Not the quick kind of sorry people use to end discomfort. This one came out heavy, late, imperfect. For Disney, she said. For making Ethan feel unwanted. For letting Kara carry my pride and letting you carry everything else. I could have softened it for her. The old Merritt would have. Instead, I told the truth. I can forgive you, but forgiveness is not the same as access. Mom looked up. Ethan will not be placed in any room where he has to prove he belongs. Not at your house. Not at Kara's. Not at Christmas. If every child is not welcome, then my son and I won't be there. Kara nodded first. Mom's hands trembled in her lap, but she nodded too. That evening, when I got home, Ethan was in the garage wiping down his bike chain. The Disney pin was still clipped to his backpack. His glass jar sat on the shelf nearby, still full of coins. He saw me looking at it. "I don't think I want to spend that money," he said. "No?" He shook his head. "Maybe we can use it someday for another kid who thinks they don't belong." I had no words ready for that. My son was still the same boy. Same paper route, same scuffed sneakers. Same careful way of folding bills flat before saving them. But something had changed. He no longer moved through the world asking for permission to take up space. And that, more than any castle or tour or expensive reservation, was the gift I had wanted for him all along. The envelope arrived in early December, tucked between a grocery flyer and a Christmas card from my dentist. It had a Disney logo in the corner, but what was inside had nothing to do with tickets. Ethan spotted it first. "Dad, did Disney send us something?" I was making sandwiches for his school lunch, half listening to the weather report from the little radio on the counter. He brought the envelope to me with that careful look he got when something mattered more than he wanted to admit. Inside was a handwritten letter from Sophia, our VIP guide. She wrote that she had shared Ethan's story during a cast member meeting. Not the expensive part, not the private tour. She wrote about a boy who thanked every employee by name, asked thoughtful questions, and told her he wanted to build rides where kids without much money could still feel special. At the bottom, she had written, "Kindness is the kind of magic no company can manufacture. It has to come from people." A small package slipped from the envelope. Inside was a Disney pin with 3 words engraved on the back: "Keep wonder alive." Ethan held it in both hands. "I think Grandpa Arlen would have liked this one." I looked toward the hallway where Dad's old wooden box sat on the shelf. I know he would. Life did not turn perfect after that. Real healing never works that neatly. Ethan still got up before sunrise for his paper route, though I kept it reasonable. 52 homes, no more unless it was a weekend. He saved because he liked having a goal, not because he believed money made him worthy. Twice a month, he volunteered at the Animal Rescue Center near the library. He checked out books about engineering, roller coasters, and old Disney attractions. One night, I found a notebook on his desk, labeled Dreams. Inside were sketches of ride tracks, gears, little boats, and signs that said things like, "Welcome, everyone." He caught me looking and shrugged. "Maybe someday I won't just visit Disney," he said. "Maybe I'll build something there." I did not say anything grand. I just said, "I believe you." And this time, he believed me back. Family changed too, slowly and unevenly. Mom came by some Sundays with banana bread or a casserole she clearly bought from Publix and moved into her own dish. She asked Ethan about school before asking about anyone else. That mattered. I still did not leave him alone with her for long stretches. Trust was not a light switch. It was a porch step, rebuilt one board at a time. Kara's life became quieter after Reginald left. The big house went on the market. Her Christmas cards stopped looking like magazine ads. Callum joined Ethan on a few Saturday paper routes, and Katie helped him make donation flyers for the animal shelter. The kids found their way toward each other faster than the adults did. That is often how it goes. By Christmas, Mom invited us to dinner. I told her we would come, but only if every child was treated like family from the moment they walked in. She said, "I understand." Those 2 words sounded different coming from her mouth. The gathering was simple. No matching outfits, no performance. Just ham, green beans, too many pies, and old ornaments from the attic. Before dinner, Mom placed a framed photo on the mantel. I recognized it immediately. A cookout from years ago. Everyone at the picnic table, laughing. In the original photo, I had been half cut off in the background by the grill holding a tray of burgers. I remembered that day because I had done most of the cooking and almost none of the sitting. This version had been restored. The cropped edge was widened. I was visible now, still by the grill, still serving, but no longer erased. Mom touched the frame. "I can't change where you were standing," she said quietly, "but I won't keep pretending you weren't there." No one spoke for a while. Sometimes an apology does not fix the wound. It simply stops making it deeper. After dinner, Ethan disappeared upstairs and came back carrying the Disney Fund jar. The blue label was still there, though the edges had begun to peel. He set it in the center of the coffee table. "I've been thinking," he said. "This helped me get through some hard days. But I don't need it the same way anymore." Mom's eyes filled. Etan looked at her, then at Kara, then at me. "Could we use it to help another kid go somewhere they've only dreamed about?" That room went silent in the best possible way. I reached into my wallet and took out Dad's letter. I did not read it aloud. I simply folded it once and placed it beside the jar. The inheritance, the hope, the lesson, all of it was finally in the same room. On the drive home, Etan fell asleep before we reached the main road. His backpack rested against his knees, 2 Disney pins clipped to the front. The dream's notebook was tucked beside him. I used to think my father left me money. I was wrong. He left me courage. The courage to stop calling silence peace. The courage to protect my son before protecting appearances. The courage to end a family pattern without burning down the whole family. People have asked me if spending $35,000 on one Disney trip was worth it. They are asking the wrong question. The money bought a vacation, but what it gave my son was something no receipt can measure: the certainty that he belonged. And once a child knows that, the world becomes a place worth walking into. If I had to make that choice again, I would press confirm every single time. Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong by the people who should have loved you best? Or did someone step in, even once, and remind you that your worth was never up for debate? I'd truly love to hear your story.